last week we introduced the topic of Mahabharata, the story which precedes it gives a context into the Gita, because the Gita is in itself the main teaching of how to navigate through life. However, it becomes a lot more valid, that is the Gita, through the context of Mahabharata. And also Mahabharata contains some lessons in themselves which are discussion worthy. And they're discussion worthy because the whole Mahabharata is actually, this is excluding the Gita now, whereby it's a human story, right? And the human story goes through so many complexities. And through this Mahabharata, we learn that one truth about human life, and that is human life is not black or white. That means we do not put categories. It's either like this or it's like that. And that is our common mistake, that we look at the world and we say, well, this is where this belongs according to my idea or where it should belong. And this is where this belongs according to my idea or where it should belong. And so we turn this world into our own creation, really. So therefore it creates conflicts with the world because it doesn't align with because we're putting priority over the world, right? And then you say, okay, so what? So what if I am, coloring in the world? What difference does that make? Well, it makes a huge difference because firstly, if truth demands clarity of the mind, then how can truth be assimilated if the person is coloring in the world with their own notions? Because suppose that someone tells you a certain principle of reality, and then the person hears this and they say, okay, I understood. This sounds really good. And what happens is when we hear this, then we, slowly, as I said last week, through time, we misinterpret it to suit our notions because it makes us feel good. So that means we always resort to rather feeling good instead of trying to see what was the real meaning behind that message. So to prevent this trap of trying to feel good when we hear something, we reiterate the message through different means, through different ways, so that there's no room for error. That means we don't color in the world and thus create resistance to living. And that causes what? It causes an a life that is generally hard, right, to move through. And we introduced the Mahabharata and we said that King Vichitravirya had two sons. And they were both Dhritarashtra, which was the oldest. He was blind and he married Gandhari. They had 100 sons, and the oldest was Duryodhana, and they were called the Kauravas. And the youngest son of Vichitravirya was Pandu, who had 5 sons, Yudhishthira, Arjuna, Bhima, Nakul, and Sahadev. And Yudhishthira was the wisest. And so therefore Yudhishthira, I think it was the oldest also. So for that reason, he was like the next king, right? But also, so was Duryodhana, the oldest in the Kauravas. So now we had Yudhishthira, the oldest in the Pandava side, and Duryodhana, eldest in the Kaurava side. So this, who now should be king, we will come to this section, but this in itself started to create a conflict. How do we resolve this situation? Because if you think about it, Yudhishthira deserves to be the king, right? But also Duryodhana also deserves to be the king. So now how do we make this decision without disappointing the other side, right? Or without creating a potential mistake that looking back in the future, we say, it should have been the other one, right? So how do we make this decision? That was the question. And then we said Dhritarashtra was blind, and because he was blind, he couldn't rule the kingdom, right? So it was decided that Pandu should instead rule the kingdom, which is out of convention because usually it's the oldest brother who will rule the kingdom. However, Pandu had to rule, and this caused some resentment in Dhritarashtra, not because he's a quote bad person. See, this is again a black or white, if we put person under a black or white category. But it's just, if you put yourself in that situation, suppose you were born blind, right? And you have the right to the throne. And you're like, well, I'm blind, why me? Is that going to cause some sort of emotional difficulties in life? Yeah, you bet. It's definitely going to cause emotional difficulties in life. So these difficulties that is emotional, that's what caused Dhritarashtra to make the decisions. And he was almost helpless at doing it because he basically carried these emotions for his entire life, right? That he was the eldest and he was supposed to rule the kingdom, but he was impaired visually, so therefore he couldn't. And then we said that because Pandu ruled, he was such a great king, right? And he was well respected, he was liked by all. And for this reason, it was decided that Pandu deserved some break. He deserved to go to the forest and have some time alone. And then we talked about the scene whereby he saw a deer or saw a general animal, and he mistook it for he thought he heard an animal, and then he shot the arrow, and then he actually killed both the sage and the wife. So that's where we stopped last week. However, before going forward into this discussion, and it's going to be a detailed discussion, what I would like to do is just finish off with some names that we have not done last week, because I'm interested in your story, where you're from, and just a little bit about yourself, right? Because we want to get to know each other. That way we're not foreigners just listening and tuning in every week and going, okay, talk, right? So we all need to get to know each other. Okay, I think that's fair, right? Because we're all human beings, so we all have something to contribute. Okay, so let's see. Okay, let's start with Shinyi. Okay, Shinyi, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shinyi. I've been with the group since the beginning of this course. And I'm very interested in, philosophy and as well as Vedanta as studies. So, so that's why I find, the course is very, very interesting and very practical as well. And I enjoy it very much.
Okay, thank you, Shinyi.
Thank you.
Now we have, let's see here, I'm doing deduction comparison, what we have done. Okay, let's do Caroline. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name's Caroline. And actually, fortuitously, Shinyi told me about these meetings, and Shinyi and I had been attending the School of Philosophy in Melbourne for quite some time, and so have a history of studying philosophy together, and she told me how wonderful this was, so I was excited to come along tonight and have participate, I guess, have a listen and participate. Yeah.
Okay. So you're Shinyi's friend from the philosophy school, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Connections. Okay. Thank you, Caroline.
No problem.
Okay, we have Mary. Okay, Mary. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Marie, and I think I've attended this class a couple of times last year. It's been 2 years I've been in Australia, and before I come here, I traveled to India.
Well, let me fix up
for 1 year, and I studied many kinds of yoga and philosophy. So then since I came to Melbourne as a student, I looked for another philosophy and Bhagavad Gita classes, and I found out this Vedanta course. So I found it very good for me, and I thought that is what I was looking for. So yeah, that's how I ended up with this class.
Okay. Mary, is someone making a smoothie in the background?
Sorry?
Someone making a smoothie in the background, like a. Okay. Okay. So, Mary, where are you located?
Located?
Yeah, located. Location. India or Australia?
Sorry?
India or Australia?
India. No, sorry, in Melbourne.
You're in Melbourne. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I understand. Okay. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you.
Okay. We have Didi. Hello, Didi. Didi, welcome. Green square with a D. Okay. Didi has asked you on mute here. I think Didi stated.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, it's me.
Yes,
Can you
yes. Hi, tell us about yourself, please.
Oh, yes. I guess like a lot of other people had a search of different philosophies, Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, Taoism, that sort of thing over the years, and started following Neo Advaita for a time, and just got nowhere with that. And then from Meetup, I got found the group, the Yes Vedanta group. Yeah, and I've just been really enjoying that over the time. And what else? I think just recently, just in the break, I've sort of really found that I'd been using Vedanta sort of like an ambulance and a hospital. So I'd have a crisis and I'd turn to Vedanta and try and get Vedanta to solve my problem. But I realised that Vedanta is more like a good diet and good exercise, that it's there to be with your life all the time. Yeah, that's it. And just recently I've been really into the Nididhyasanam practice of writing stuff down. I didn't think I was quite up for that yet. And then it was funny, I was listening to a Nima lecture, and her husband, and said, "Oh, you got to write all this stuff down." And I thought, he was the final one to say it. Lots of people have been saying it, and he was the final one to say it, that sort of gave me the final push to
yes.
doing it. And it's sort of like the movie The Shining, where the guy in the hotel and he goes crazy and he just writes all this stuff all over the walls. And I've got notebooks and notebooks full of seemingly, I think if someone else picked them up, they would think I was crazy. Yeah.
Okay, so you're into writing. I hope you didn't write what Shining wrote.
Yeah.
No fun. I think it's like no fun or all play, no fun, or something like that.
Yes. And is it? Can you see me there or no? Who? Oh, can you see me?
I can't see you. I just see a green square.
Okay. No problem.
Yeah, no worries. But I can definitely visualize you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to get I'm moved over to the phone, so I'm trying to get the phone working. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Arun and we have Madhu. Hello. Welcome. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Please unmute yourself.
Oh, unmute.
Yes, good. Tell us about yourself, please.
Well, we have been involved with Vedanta and with the Gita spirituality for over 20 years, involved with Chinmaya Mission. And then I think we have been listening to Andre's lectures and have been coming to the classes. It might be now more than a year or maybe 2 years, and we have been thoroughly enjoying it, and we never wanted to miss it. And we're so delighted, Andre, that you have started this Zoom class so we can get reconnected. And thank you for that.
Yeah, I must say that actually I've been told by several wonderful people to start the Zoom. And it was actually Madhu, she on the phone, who her words, the way she said it, that was like the final, right? Okay, do it. So I really respect that, how it was so like firm, like do it.
No, I didn't want to bother you too much, but I was missing the classes, Andre.
Yeah, but I think we're all here because of you know, you're the final, like David said, the final push. You were the final push for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have Lloyd. Hello, Lloyd. Tell us about yourself.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Well, my story.
Yes, please.
Started the School of Philosophy in about 2013, and I got to know a few people through there, and I think it was Adrian Gatt who recommended this course to me when I was at School of Philosophy, and I came along, and but this definitely seemed to be the speed at which I wanted to do, because I felt before I wasn't learning quick enough, and I was getting all this information and brilliant stuff very quickly, which has been great. What should I say? I don't know. Many years ago, I was in a religion called Ekankar, and then that ended for me in around about 2000, and I sort of got into looking into the world and how to save the world with tax reform and economics and things, and then that faded out, and then got into this philosophy again, and it sort of just came into this sort of philosophy by accident. Wasn't really looking intensely for anything. I haven't tried out a lot of things, but I've had a few seemingly really cool experiences, which I thought, this really means something to me, and I want to find out more. And but lately, I don't know, things have been going up and down. I don't know really where I am at the moment.
Okay.
Just sort of getting back into meditation again, because I left that for a while. Yeah. So.
Okay.
I don't know. It's good to see you again.
Yes, likewise. Welcome back. Glad to see you.
Thank you.
Okay. We have. Have I missed someone? Jivita, have I done Jivita? Oh, Jivita. Oh, she's hiding. It's hide and seek, huh? Okay, tell us about yourself, Jivita.
Yeah, it's mostly hide and seek because of my kids not troubling me. Hope you guys can hear me.
Faintly.
Faintly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, it's good now.
Vedanta class where I got introduced to your class by my mother-in-law, because she was following Swami Paramatmananda's lectures, and also Swamini Satyavratananda in his lineage.
Yeah.
My personal journey started when I've been through different faiths, different lineages. I have been everywhere, but I was not convinced with any of the teachings, and I couldn't give 100% out there and believe 100% of it, because it was not convincing to me. So I kept looking for it, and then somehow I ended up on Advaita teachings, and since then, I've been looking for that, and then now I'm sticking with Swami Paramatmananda's and Chinmayananda's language, and sticking to those lectures, because they are very beautifully delivered, and it's in order. There's a pattern, and there's a anyone who is starting like at any stage, they can just follow. So it's just beautiful. So I'm totally hooked up, and I can't go anywhere else now. So yeah.
Yeah, I like how you're sticking. You say you're sticking to Paramaritananda, who's an incredible teacher. He's structured also. So you're in the right place, definitely. But I'm so glad to have you also, Jivat. Smiling, huh? Always smiling. Okay. All right. Have I missed anyone? Pillai. Have I done Pillai?
Oh, yes. I thought you were going with non-video participants.
No, just going by random.
Oh, okay.
Okay, welcome.
My name is Sundram, or you can call me Subra if you want. But I have been involved in Chinmaya Mission for nearly over some years, and I've been studying Advaita philosophy. Basically, I have been introduced by Rani and Singh, Dev Singh, I should say. But earlier on, I couldn't travel because I live around Melton, which is further away. And so now I found the Zoom participation is much more easy and convenient. I also listened to some of your lectures and thought it'll be very interesting to continue in this Vedantic journey.
Okay. I'm surprised though that people find does anyone else also relate that the Zoom is more convenient?
Yeah.
You do?
Yes.
I think also traveling is fun, right? Traveling a long distance to get somewhere is also fun, but I think it's fine because we got like mixed opinions, but I'm personally still not so much fond of Zoom, but I thought it's better than nothing, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you can't connect with international people like, what's the name?
Mina, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, you never know, you might go beyond that, India, beyond to other countries. So Zoom is a very convenient way of communicating, teaching, etc.
True.
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing like person to person, face to face.
Yeah, it's got a different dimension to it. I think after face to face, there will be Zoom next, and then maybe an audio recording. Yeah, something in that order. Okay, so wonderful. Thank you. All right, so let's continue from where we left off. So we said that Pandu, he had a break, and so he was taken to the forest. He went to the forest with his wife. It was actually two wives, but just for the sake of simplicity, we'll say one wife. And he was hunting, right? Just like any normal person would. And something in the bush was heard, and so he fires the arrow. And then, because when the arrow struck the sage, and the wife of the sage both screamed, right? And so he realized, oh no, I killed, I just injured two human beings. So when Pandu came over, he was very sorry. He was absolutely devastated to see this. However, the sage, he cursed Pandu because, Pandu was negligent. And this negligence is that's what the topic was last week. Now, 3 topics were brought up last week by Mohan, by Martin, and by Mauktik. And I want to address all of them. Firstly, the topic brought by Mohan was this concept of mindfulness or alertness. So actually a few years ago, most seminars were about this concept called multitasking. I don't know if you remember, but it was a stage whereby you could do many things at once, right? And just get things done. And what's really interesting is through the course of time, this whole wave of multitasking, that is how to get many things done at once, how to be just like productive, right? It faded away. Why? Because people realized that in multitasking, we're not together. When I say we, that means the person themselves is not together. In other words, they're dispersed. Their mind is all over the place. It's a little bit there, it's a little bit here, it's a little bit everywhere. So 100% capacity, a full potential of a human being cannot be put into any one of these tasks the mind is looking at. So through the course of time, we not only realize that this multitasking doesn't bring us fulfillment, right? Because we want to actually feel happy. Like if you do something, you don't want to just do it for the sake of doing it, but you actually want to enjoy what we're doing. So we discovered that multitasking doesn't give us fulfillment, which we're all seeking, and it creates mistakes, at least mistakes that we discover later on. That means we go, oh, I missed the details. I should have looked into this. And because I haven't, now I missed out the opportunity, which otherwise would have been here, fully actualized, should I have put my full attention onto that task. But I didn't, right? Because it was multitasking. So, and today's seminars are about what? Did you notice how they changed into what? Mindfulness? It's a huge topic today. If you type it on Google, mindfulness events, mindfulness seminars, mindfulness, how to be more mindful. Why? Because we realize these two concepts. One, we're not fulfilled if we're multitasking, and two, we're not together. So what does not together mean? Can someone explain to me according to what I said?
One-pointedness, single-pointedness.
Single-pointedness.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Not together means our energies are scattered, and on a lot of places. So we are not focused at one task.
Good, good. So both of them are correct. So our focus is dispersed, right? And because of our limitations of our minds, it simply cannot put full focus in anything if it's thinking about what should I do? For example, I'll just give you a practical example. A common scenario is, suppose I say, or someone says something to you, and then you reply. And what are they thinking? They're thinking, okay, have I said, are they now judging me because I said this? Could have I said this in a better way? Are they now thinking that, something that, are they now having an opinion about me? Are they now judging me because I said this? So in other words, person A and person B. Person B says something to person A, and person A just wants to naturally respond. So person A is responding, right? But person B is thinking about what they said, whether it's, what kind of impact it's had on this person. So in that scenario, is person B together? Are they focused? No. In other words, not only can they now enjoy they're not enjoying the conversation, first of all. And second of all, they're not going to reply, person B is not going to reply properly to person A, which is sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because person B was thinking, they're going to judge me. And because they weren't together, the person B wasn't listening to what person A was saying, then, it's like a response, like this response is out of context. And then person A is also going to respond in a way that is going to confirm what person B was thinking. So in other words, by having a mind dispersed, that means I'm not together myself. I'm not in this moment focused with you right here, right now. Instead, what am I doing? I'm thinking about, how is this going? And am I saying the right things? Should have I said this in a better way? And are you judging me right now? And are you even liking what I'm saying? And could I say this in a better way? How can I be more charming? And so on, right? So all of these things are actually denying the attention, and also it's being actually unfair to the other person. Now, Martin then brought up the word of attachment, and he said attachment determines the reaction, Right, I think that's what Martin said. Is he still online?
Hi. Yep. Hi. Yeah, I was just thinking about, as you were speaking then, I was just thinking how yoga meaning union, where what we're talking about now is where your attention is in one sense through your physical senses in the moment right now, but in one sense, and then it's flicking for your attention, that's in your physical body through your physical senses, and then it's flicking to your subtle body through your thoughts and your emotions somewhere else, and it's constantly moving backwards and forwards. Whereas the yoga is the union. It's the actually keeping your attention into the combination of the being aware of what you're actually doing. You know?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So what Martin is saying is, a typical example is changing focus between, for example, suppose there's a pain in your leg, and you're having a conversation, and you're trying to have some, deep existential thoughts, and you're having that thought, but then because the pain is so intense, right? You can't help yourself but to put the attention back onto the leg. So it's sort of interchanging one and the other. Now, that's an extreme scenario, but in most cases, we're not going to be talking to another person with a sore leg, right? So in this case, it's understandable. Your attention will probably go on a sore back or a sore headache, and you're trying your best to keep focus, right? But it's interchanging. But if everything's fine, if a person is just generally healthy, then this kind of flicking back and forth between 2 points of focus, it is completely unnecessary, because it actually detracts from the total experience that you otherwise could be enjoying and providing and contributing to this whole conversation. Yeah. Now, attachment. What does attachment mean? Attachment is something that is mechanical. Okay, so what does this mean, mechanical? Mechanical means I choose to come back just because I'm comfortable. I choose to come back in my little comfort playground just because it's what I'm used to, right? And not only do I choose to come back, but also I choose to do the things in the same way as I've done them before. Why? Because it's comfortable, right? It's predictable. I know if I do it this way, it's going to give me a certain result. So why should I go outside the paradigm? So therefore, it becomes a mechanical process. Now, what does this do? What does attachment? Suppose I have an attachment for, let me see here, for my iPad here. So if I have attachment for my iPad, what I'm going to do every day, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to first think, okay, let me write on the iPad, let me draw on the iPad, let me read on the iPad, let me do everything on the iPad. See how I'm missing out on opportunities that I could be doing elsewhere? So it becomes all about the iPad. It's sort of like robbing me, my attention into itself only. So it becomes what? I become mechanical, right? I've done what I've done yesterday. What else does attachment do? It shuts down the mind to learning, to exploring new opportunities. In other words, if I'm stuck on the iPad, then I'm not thinking about something like going out and playing football, right? Or going on a bicycle, going inside on a park and making some friends or something. So it closes, so this attachment closes down the mind to learning and thinking and asking questions. So it shuts down this question asking process. So now let's tie this in with Pandu. So suppose now Pandu was attached to his bow and arrow and his pride, his valor. I'm a good archer, right? I've always aimed properly, and I always guess correctly what it is. Like if it's an animal, it's an animal. In other words, I'm attached to my skills. I'm attached to my sense of valor. I'm attached to my accuracy. And now what we say about attachment, it creates mechanical process. In other words, it shuts down the possibility to ask questions. Therefore, what happens is it happens, so it's without thinking, right? Because I'm attached. So in other words, it creates a false sense of confidence. Rigidity. Why? Because every situation demands flexibility. It needs to be looked at in a new, fresh way. Whereas what does attachment do? It looks at the way that I've done it before and it brings it into the present. Whereas what I should be doing is not only bringing my experience from the past into the present, but also assessing, is it in the highest and greatest good that this that I put this into action the way that I've done it before? Or should I modify it in order to suit the situation intelligently? And then Mauktik, yes, Mauktik?
Actually, I had a question. Does attachment bring in ego? Because as you said, like Pandu will be attached to his confidence about, I can shoot the arrow and it will hit the animal. So can it bring in ego?
Yeah, so when we say this ego, it brings in a sense of what I know, right? It brings, as I said, this confidence, this this individuality. So individuality starts to rule, and it excludes the environment. So it all becomes about me, right? My skills, my what I know, what I've done yesterday, but it doesn't put focus on what's going on outside here in the environment. So yes, in a sense, it does reinforce this individual. Like what I know is what is true. Okay, so what Mauktik was bringing up, and it's a good question, was he put focus on the sage, and he said, what about the quality of the sage, right? Because the sage sounded like quite harsh to give such a penalty to Pandu. But if you think about it, he didn't give a harsh penalty at all. He didn't say you will die tomorrow. He just said if you get intimate with your wife at any moment, then you will die. So what does the sage represent? The sage and his wife both represent the one who is in touch with Ishwara's laws and orders, the one who is clear, right? So a sage is one who is clear. And what happens when Pandu, who is actually a good person, right? He's a good king. He's got a track record of wonderful things he's done in the kingdom of Hastinapur. So what happens here? One mistake, right? Good person, good guy, shoots the arrow, and what happens? Ishwara doesn't make exemptions to its laws and orders of karma. It provides the same punishment whether the person has 40 years of perfect track record and they make one mistake. No one is an exemption. Ishwara does, Ishwara's laws and orders don't go, okay, you've done good for the people, you've grew Hastinapur kingdom, and now you made this mistake, and I'm going to give you a break, right? Don't worry about it. I'm not going to punish you, right? It doesn't work like that. In other words, what the message here is, even good people, when they make a mistake, they still cannot get away from inescapable consequences that are set up through this vast intelligence called Ishwara, which connects all of these laws like chemical, biological, psychological, right? All of these laws, dharma and karma, they are all connected by this intelligence. And when one is out of alignment, when one violates the laws of this intelligence, then they get their consequences no different than someone who has done years and years of something that is immoral or unrighteous. In other words, there's no exemptions for anyone. That means in other words, Ishwara does not put biases onto you because you're such a good person. Now the question is, what kind of consequences are going to ensue, right? What's going to come? And there are two answers. There are severe consequences and there are minor consequences. Now I'm going to tie this in with our own life. Think about your own life. So whatever you do, right? Whenever you and I are out of alignment with this vast intelligence that connects all of these orders together, then you and I both experience either severe penalties or minor penalties. Now, what's the difference? What dictates whether I receive a severe or a minor penalty? What dictates it is the kind of negligence that is put out. So what do I mean by this? There are two kinds of negligences. The first one is in the case of Pandu, right? Or even a child. So this kind of negligence is less severe. And what do I mean? This kind of negligence is created through assumption. Now you say, what is assumption? What do you think assumption is? When we assume. When we assume.
Without intention.
It's what?
Without intention?
Without intention. Now, what is intention though?
Mental projection.
Okay, so
intending to hurt.
Action is an action that is based on previous experiences.
Okay, good. Okay, they're actually all right. I wish I could just put them together. So when we say assumption, what is assumption? Assumption is it's a mechanical estimation. It's a mechanical approximation. What do I mean by this? In other words, as Pillai.
Just call it Subra, it's easier.
Huh? Subra. So as Subra has said, it is taking the past, right? And on the basis of what has happened in the past, I mechanically project that, as Martin said, onto what I assume represents what happened in the past, right? In other words, I turn the present into a close approximation of what has happened in the past. And so therefore I make them equal, but we know they cannot be equal because, as we said before, the present always demands a new evaluation of the situation, a new approximation. What could it be? So what is assumption? It is a mechanical, a repetitive approximation whereby one does not take a moment to check. In other words, one doesn't take a moment to say, okay, that's fine. It does sound like, a deer, right? So that's okay, that's fine. That's an assumption. But there is no what? There is no follow up with, let's check, right? Let's confirm this. Let's take a moment to see if it's really what I think it is. So therefore, the first kind of negligence is one that is based on assumption. What is assumption? It is a mechanical approximation, a mechanical evaluation of the situation whereby no thought or no moments are taken to check whether it is really true. Okay, so this kind of negligence is the first one, and it has less severe consequences. For example, Rishi didn't say to Pandu, okay, you shot us, now you'll die, right? Right, because Pandu still has his life, he's still breathing, he's still healthy, he can still run the kingdom, he can keep his wife away, right? That's possible, it's not that hard. So it's not that severe if you think about it. But it is still, at one level or the other, it is still, it's still a punishment, right? Because you were negligent. Now, you're going to say, what about a child, right? What about a child who doesn't know, right? They're innocent. They're just, because, a person's born ignorant. Now, how is a child supposed to, take this, considering a child is ignorant? So I will get to a child soon, but I want to let you know both child and Pandu situation are negligence number one. Now, negligence number two is more severe. This is the kind of negligence when done by you or I or anyone, it leads to lawsuits, it leads to jail, right? It leads to serious fines or serious consequences that are later on regretted for a lifetime, right? It's not pretty. And the second negligence is whereby you and I have prior knowledge, right? So we have knowledge of the situation, but we silence that knowledge through our likes and dislikes, right? For example, did you ever have, relate to this if you can, did you ever have a situation whereby you got an idea, right? And you thought it was a brilliant idea. And you thought, I should write this down because I know if I don't write this down, I will forget. Because on the basis of what has happened before, I always forgot when I didn't write it down. But now you say, I'll remember this time, right? And then what happens 1 hour later or 5 hours later? The idea, you don't even remember it. or it is nowhere near as accurate as it was in that moment. And you go, I should have written it down. And then the next day, right, or next month, another idea pops up. And you go, this is such a great idea. I should write, let me write this down. But you don't write it down. Why? Because you have a like for convenience. And what is more convenient? It's more convenient not to write it down now and write it down later. In other words, what? You and I find it inconvenient to take a piece of paper and a pen and use energy for 10 seconds to write an idea. We find that inconvenient. And for that reason, we don't write it down. I'm sure you heard in psychology, we all follow the law of least resistance. So what is the law of least resistance? That which provides me least resistance, I go for automatically because it's convenient. So in other words, I know that I should write this down. I have prior knowledge, but only to my likes and dislikes. They supersede, they overlap that, and they get priority. Another example is in a relationship, right? There is a feeling in you, in just, never mind what the you word means, let's philosophize about it. Just there's a feeling in you, right? Maybe it's in somewhere in the heart, maybe it's in the stomach, maybe it's somewhere that represents that something's off in this relationship with your partner, right? Something's not right here. And you know that feeling historically, that whenever that shows up, it means that the other is uncomfortable, right? You know that. But then what happens? We silence it again through our likes and dislikes because it is more convenient not to address it, not to bring it up. So then again, what happens? This over time has severe penalties. What kind of penalties? The relationship in itself deteriorates, which takes some time to then restore, even if possible later on, right? Now, what's the severe penalty for the previous example of writing an idea? Suppose you don't write an idea, right? And then you realize later, if I put just one of these ideas into action, by now my life would have been so much better, right? But you missed those ideas because you didn't write them down. In other words, there's a penalty of what? Penalty of an entire life that is lost of something that could be such a much greater expression of your skills if you were to write those ideas down. Another example is, suppose there's a floor cleaner and it's early on in the morning and they're in the shop, and they're just wiping the floor with some water. Now they know they should put the wet sign, the wet floor the wet sign on the floor, but they say, it's early, people haven't showed up yet. And so this person keeps on, wiping the floor and he's looking towards one direction and suddenly he hears a fall behind him because there's always that, that odd person who wakes up early in the morning and just finds themselves, in a store for some strange hour. And the person, this cleaner, right, turns around and he's shocked, like he's devastated. There's a person now who's lost the privilege of enjoying some body part. They broke something. Now think about the consequences of this for that cleaner. A lawsuit, definitely. Possibly even some, a big fine, jail time. What happened? The cleaner knew it is right to put the sign. But because of his or her convenience, it was easier to put that sign later than now. Therefore, they submitted to one's likes and dislikes. And that caused this negligence number 2, severe penalty. Another example is, did you ever have a situation someone sent you a video title, like a URL? And in the URL, by the text, right? That what it's going to be about, and it's going to be something that's likely negative, and it's going to sort of almost destroy your day just by reading this article, because that these kind of articles, this kind of content doesn't open one up. It sort of closes one down. And even your YouTube video takes some time to load, right? Now but the title is going to be negative, and what do? We don't pause the video, right? Something in us something tempts us to still look at that video. In other words, we knew historically, we knew from our experience that if I look at this, it's going to make me negative. If I look at this article, it's going to make me negative. So you had a chance to say no, but we didn't. Why? Because of our likes and dislikes, because of our sort of like, yeah, but I'm tempted. I've got nothing else to do, right? And then we look at the article and then lo and behold, same feeling of misery as any other time. So what kind of penalty does this have? It basically, colors in the day with that kind of emotion. So this is negligence number 2. And what kind of results does it have? It produces guilt. What does this mean? It makes one weaker to say no next time. And they start to judge themselves, like, what kind of a person am I? I can't say no. I can't do things right now. I put things off. In other words, it reduces one's self-confidence, one's self-esteem. It makes one feel less about themselves. Why? Because negligence number 1, negligence number 2, right? Didn't follow through what we knew was right. In this case, negligence number 2. Now you say, what about negligence number 1? Like, what can we do about that? Because, if I don't know, I don't know, right? Well, that's where life experience comes, right? Because our life today is generally what? An expression of yesterday. So suppose I'll give you an experiment. For one day, watch movies, if you want. Just imagine watching movies, just movie after movie. Watch how your tomorrow reflects what you've done yesterday. Notice how all of the thoughts are going to be in line with yesterday. And they're going to call, the movie lines, the humor, the even personality is going to change and so on. And what's that going to do? It's going to cause one to think in line with yesterday. Thus, their actions are going to simply continue that today. Now, is that giving an opportunity for the person to learn, to expand? No, because they're preoccupied with what they've done yesterday. And then experiment number 2, spend one whole day just reading something positive, like some wisdom or something that inspires you. And then watch how the next day you feel almost like on a trajectory from yesterday. And that trajectory causes one to learn more, right? To capture more potential perspectives about reality, which in the future will certainly avoid negligences number 1. Okay, so negligence number 1, how to solve this? That's where we look at our days. Is my day today something that is going to create a meaningful life tomorrow, a life that is worth expanding, a life that is worth learning tomorrow, or is it going to shut me down, right? Is it going to just cause me to think about movies and think about entertainment, think about news and so on? Because if we're thinking about news, which is nothing wrong with it, what happens? We're not thinking about personal growth. Right? So therefore, that increases negligence number 1 potential. Now, both cases, negligence number 1 and negligence number 2, are Ishvara's law of karma. And this law of karma brings suffering. Now, what is law of karma? When we say a law of karma, all we mean is cause and effect. In other words, today is an effect. An effect of what? It's an effect of causes that have created this kind of effect. So the person, all they have to ask is, are my effects today something that is worthwhile, something that is meaningful? If the answer is no, then what do? We need to look at our causes. Then we ask, what kind of causes could I be, when I say cause, what kind of actions? So what kind of causes could I have been creating that have led me to being here, enjoying this effect, or suffering now, today? Both are effects, of course, right? So in other words, law of karma is simply whatever I put out, that quality is what I receive back. It's simple. The whole life is just law of karma, cause, effect. Now, what happens often is people try to figure this karma out, right? You know, sanchita, you got prarabdha, you got agami karma. So they get into this big conversation and try to connect all of the dots, like how karma works. The answer to that is, it is impossible for this limited mind to figure out how karma works. Why? Because there are too many variables that contribute to where we are today. Now, this karma, I will get into whereby Draupadi gets disrobed in the court, and I'll talk more about karma. However, I'm just introducing it here. So the message so far is, it is not enough just to play the role of a king. It's insufficient. It is not enough just to play the role of a parent. It is insufficient. It is not enough just to play the role of a teacher. It is insufficient. For example, suppose a teacher just teaches, right? They teach, but they don't learn. So what are they doing? Now they're falling into mechanical mode. They're just repeating what they know from the past. In other words, now they're doing a disfavor to everyone else because the world's moving on and you need to stay up with the news. It is not enough just to be a good king like Pandu, enjoying the kingdom, helping people. Why? What about personal growth? In other words, it is not enough just to be a king. The king, Pandu, has to attend to his own evolution, to his own personal growth. Another example is when a parent often puts their entire life into, the child, which is, that is certainly a role that is required. But all of it, right? So what happens then? Isn't the whole point to help the child to evolve? Yeah, to make them the best human being possible? Then how is that possible if the parent is not taking time for themselves to grow, to expand? Because to grow and to expand means what? I take those learnings and I get to share it with my children. So if I take that aspect out of self-growth, then I deny my children from growth. If I take the aspect of personal growth out of being a king, then I deny, my wife's attention. I deny the entire Hastinapur a king like Pandu. So it is not enough just to play the role that we're playing. We need to also put focus on our own individual personal growth. Okay. Now, the other factors that influence the neglect, right? There's a few more factors. What contributes to our neglect, to your and my neglect? What makes you and I neglectful? One of them is an age factor. For example, what about a toddler, right, who doesn't know any better? Innocent. You can't now put him into jail, right? So in any society, in any culture, you will notice that after a certain age, what happens? Suppose you're 17 years and 11 months and 23 hours and 59 minutes. More like 11 months. Okay, so it's that 1 minute until you're 18. So 1 minute, right? An offense is minor, right? It's not. It doesn't give that much penalty. But what happens that 1 minute later? Jail. Huge difference, right? Why is that? What's the meaning of this? Like sudden transformation, sudden shift. What do you think it is?
The criteria. I mean, actually, according to law, it's a criteria. It's an inclusion criteria for legal action.
Okay, criteria. Expand on criteria.
Criteria meaning like, if you're 18 and if you commit a crime, then that's one of the inclusion criteria for the person to be sentenced or taken.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the question is now, why is it such a transformation from 17 to 18? Or depends on what culture. Some of them is 23 to 24, right? But why is it such a huge difference?
It's the
It's see how much experience, the person has accumulated in order to make right decisions about doing that particular task for what the age limit is defined.
Okay.
Well, you're supposed to be under your parents' control as a minor, and you're supposed to be under your own control as an adult, isn't it?
Okay. Let's expand one more person. Let's expand on everything that was said so far.
Well, you become an adult, so you're accountable for your own actions.
Very good. Okay, so Aruna puts it in a very accurate way. So in other words, we had 17 years to gain experience, as Nina was saying, right? We had 17 years to grow up, to look into to learn. Now, how is that so? Tell me this, and then you can ask your question. So I'll ask you a question to answer to me. Is anyone denied feedback from the society? Feedback. Like feedback as to how you are, what you're doing, what is right and what is wrong, and so on. Is anyone denied that?
No.
No matter where we're born, no one is denied a feedback system that is built into the society. Suppose someone is speaking loudly. Now, how many times do you actually speak to a person in your lifetime? Hundreds, right? At least before 17. And when a person speaks, those loud phone speakers on the train or something, and then getting all these smirks, and even the energy in the train doesn't feel open. And all of these feedbacks are always coming in, and the person they miss it out, right? Or another example is, suppose one's interrupting the conversation constantly. They just want to, they just can't wait till they have their turn. And then you get feedback, I'm actually talking here, right? And so that's another feedback, right? In other words, we had 17 years to receive these kinds of messages and to learn from parents, from society, from interactions, and so on. And when we hit that mark, that 18, it's really interesting how it's even incorporated inside our legal system. It's almost like there's a knowing, right? You've had your shot, right? You had your learning experience. Now you're now accountable, right? Now let's put it into practice. And if you haven't been paying attention, then there are severe consequences. For example, let's put this into a more concrete way. Not just communication, but suppose you're getting feedback from your body, right? Our body also gives us feedback. And there is repetitive, pain in the hands or migraines or back pain or something that is just clearly repetitive. And the person keeps receiving this feedback over and over again. And they just do what? Oh, it's okay, it's just gonna pass. Just take a pill and solve the problem. Put a Band-Aid over it. And what happens one day? It gets so severe, the person has no choice, but they end up in a hospital. I know a friend of mine who he had a kidney pain, and it was repetitive, right? He couldn't understand, why am I getting kidney pain all the time? And then one day, I got an SMS, and he's in a hospital. He took a picture of himself in a hospital, and he said, got kidney stones. And the doctor said, because you haven't been drinking enough water. In other words, it only took 10 seconds to type in kidney pain cause on Google, right? You could have looked into it. Just one suggestion. So the feedback was provided, but the individual did not look into it. For example, in I said this in the beginning of our course, in speaking, there is not only satyam vadam, right? There is speaking the truth, but there's also ritam vadam. So what is ritam vadam? Ritam vadam is not only do I speak what I know to be right, but I check whether what I'm saying is really true. That means, this is avoiding assumptions. So in the same way, this checking hasn't been put into action. Therefore, what happened? Severe consequences. Another example is the economy, right? It's uncertain economy. Can anyone here, say the economy is 100% predictable? No. We know that the economy is unstable, generally unpredictable. You don't know when a pandemic is going to hit or when can a new pandemic hit in the future, and therefore jobs get lost, right? Now, despite receiving this message, despite having this feedback, we do what? We still don't save up. Because the general law of, in finances is have at least 2 years worth of savings, not pension, but at least 2 years worth of savings in the bank account that the person can live off comfortably for the whole family without having to work. But most don't do that. They're living, sort of, I think it's called paycheck to paycheck, right? So the feedback is there. The economy is unstable. But what? I just live paycheck to paycheck. And then when the pandemic hits and the job gets lost, what happens? Severe penalty. Stress, now I can't think, right? Now I'm coming in stressed in a job interview. And that's going to now cause the employer to go, this person is obviously not qualified, they're stressed. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because I wasn't paying attention. The other example is there is tension in the relationship. Right? There's some kind of like tension. And when I say this word tension, we all know what this word tension means. Like, there's some some scratching, some conflict. It's now I'm not saying, it's never going to happen. It does happen in a relationship. That's the nature of a relationship. But there is tension in a relationship and the person, so there's feedback, right? There's feedback of tension, but the person doesn't address it. They don't bring it up with their partner. And what does this do? Severe penalties, because over time it accumulates tension after tension. Because again, it's easier to put it away, to sort of just pretend it's not there, and let's get a drink. Let's just feel good. But the actual tension itself, the narrative of that tension hasn't gone away. It's just been overlaid. So when this overlaying comes over, eventually can no longer be covered up. So then it creates these explosive situations, and they're hard to address. They're much harder to address than whereas if the person brought it up when it came up in the first place. And yes, it is sometimes uncomfortable to bring it up, but we need to also take care of the future, because the future is waiting. Right? So if I don't address the past, the cause now, what kind of an effect will it have in the future? An effect whereby I will be looking in the future and I will say, I wish I addressed it back then. Right? So it needs to be addressed also because it's feedback. Another is feeling stuck or vulnerable or overwhelmed. It could be in anything. Maybe sometimes a person just feels like sensitive, right? Like, I don't know why I feel sensitive. I just don't want to be near people. I feel extra introverted, extra shy, extra vulnerable. And despite this feedback, we don't ask for any advice, right? We don't bring it up. We don't open ourselves up and say, hey, I feel vulnerable and I don't know why. What do you think it is? I think I shared a story actually in the Gita. For many years, I had this big problem that I call it big problem because it was big, that annoyed me. And that was on the third day of any retreat that I go to, I suddenly turned shy. And I knew, it was like, oh no, it's coming. Here it is again, right? And this kept happening every single retreat. On the third, fourth, and fifth day, these 3 days were the shy days. And they were just uncomfortable. And I knew it's going to be the 3rd, 4th, and the 5th day because it always happened in the past. So this happened like over like 20 retreats, and I just couldn't get rid of this. It was the most annoying thing ever. It was like, okay, here we go. Second day, 23 hours and 59 minutes. It's about to begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom, introversion, right? And finally, I thought through participation, through courage. One has to find that courage with themselves. I thought, no, I'm not gonna put up with this anymore. This is just way too much. I decided in one retreat to open myself up and share my weakness to every single individual, or not every, but it was like 90% of individuals there. I actually said, can I have an appointment with you? Can we actually walk together by the Ganga River or, whatever it was? And I just want to share this with you. And I even remember, saying, look, I feel closed off from the group. I don't feel like connecting. And I know I want to connect, but I can't find myself to connect. Something is denying me that right. What should I do? Like, I need help, right? So I decided just to go all the way sharing my weakness. And it was only because of that willingness to share the vulnerabilities, the sensitivity. From that moment on, this never happened again. Why? Because first of all, I decided no more. But not only did I say that, I said, I'm going to open myself up and share, right? Because what is there to hide? I've done the hiding before 20 times, it hasn't worked. How is the 21st time going to work? In other words, took a leap of faith and then decided, and then it's a relief. It's like honestly a relief now. It's like 3-4 days, yes, I'm still open. Everything's going good. So that feels good. The other is, actually we'll pose a question. A more important question. How do you and I know whether we are ignoring our feedback system? Think about this. How do you and I know that you and I are ignoring our feedback system?
Perhaps we're just stuck in the same problems every day.
Good. Okay. Stuck in the same problems every day. That means the
same event is repeating every time.
Say again, Mauktik.
The same event is repeating every time.
Good. Yeah. Good. Very good.
Inner conflict and inner tension.
Inner conflicts and inner tension. Yeah. How do you and I know that we are ignoring our feedback system of the body, thoughts, our partner, our feelings, or anything else that's going on, finances and so on?
Andre, you mentioned connection in your example. So how you know it by the sense of disconnect, in a sense, disconnect with yourself. One part of you tells you something's wrong.
Right, a part of us tells us.
Yet you let it be.
Yeah. Problems keep presenting themselves.
Yeah, these are all great examples. They're actually all 100% support them.
Would we say we wouldn't feel good? We just feel out of sync and just not right, like something's off.
Right. So something's off here, and we know it's true, but we still don't do anything, right? So the question is, how do we know that we are postponing, or we are ignoring, or denying, or shutting off this feedback system? So the problem is not the feedback, because in all these examples, the feedback's there, right? The feedback is not hidden away, it's there. And the more we grow up, right, the more we're sensitive to our feedback, the more it gets obvious. But how do we know? In one word, we know because we are postponing what needs to be done. There is a sense of postponement. So what does postponement mean? Postpone? Say?
Ignoring.
Ignoring, right. Putting it into a few, I'll address this in a later time. I'm going to postpone it, right? So now it's convenient not to address it, but I'll address it. So I'll address it tomorrow. And when tomorrow comes, of course, there's a new whole, bunch of thoughts that totally overlay what happened.
Isn't the first step acknowledging the feedback? Because, you can, even the act of postponing or anything first comes with acknowledgement that there is a feedback coming.
Yeah, good. Excellent. So the feedback, in this case, the feedback certainly is already present. So, let's put step one, acknowledge, right? In anything we need to acknowledge, actually verbalize it. Okay, here it is. This is my feedback now telling me something, right? Because when we make it louder through deliberation, then it ends up actually capturing your focus, right? So excellent that we said acknowledge. So step one, we acknowledge. It's here, it's present. Something is going on. Now, a common example, I'll give you some tangible, concrete example. What happens when we postpone? A common saying is, I will attend to the Gita when I first learn the Sanskrit language. I will read the Gita when I first know the Sanskrit language, right? Or sometimes I will first learn the Gita when I go to the Tattva Bodha. And when you go to Tattva Bodha, you go, oh, this is in Sanskrit, so I need to go back to Sanskrit language. Very common. Now, what is the Gita? The Bhagavad Gita, that is. It is a manual on how to live in a successful way, in a way that leads us into a successful life, right? Not only in a material sense, but also in a spiritual sense. So to say this, it's kind of like saying, you know, before I cook a meal, I need to first take a course on cookery. Before I type a single keystroke, I will first go to a typing class. Before I share my opinion, I will first learn about how to be charming. Before conceiving a child, I will first learn all about psychology of toddlers. Is that ever going to happen? In other words, this brings us back to this concept that we take life to be linear. First this and then that. Life, is anyone's life here in your experience linear? This happens and then this follows, and because this has happened, this follows. Can anyone say that life is 100% linear?
No.
Anything but.
No.
Yeah, no. So this kind of thinking that if I do this, then I can, right, then I'll give myself permission to do that. This is a mind trying to take the entire vast reality and put it into, you know, a sense of A, B, C, D. And this is a mistake, and it doesn't let progress ensue, because we actually stifle our progress waiting to first attend to Sanskrit, which is probably, you know, never going to happen in the first place. It's such a vast field, before we can enter into the Gita. So, okay, so what's the message of the Mahabharata? The message of the Mahabharata is that even good people make mistakes, right? Because the Pandavas are good people. And those who do make mistakes, who are negligent, they get no more or less punished than anyone else. So no one is an exemption. And what the Mahabharata is trying to tell us is that we need to refine our personality from Duryodhana. Duryodhana is one who is, you know, small, narrow-minded, just doesn't think openly, just narrow. It's like, what can I get, like, for myself? So we need to refine our personality from Duryodhana into Arjuna. Now, what does Arjuna represent? Arjuna is someone who's open, willing to listen to the teacher, Krishna, willing to investigate, to ask. I mean, the whole Gita is really just Arjuna asking questions, and the Gita is composed as a result of the answers to those questions. And then finally into one who is Krishna. Krishna represents what? One who is in touch with, or is in line with, the laws and orders. In other words, we go from Duryodhana, we, you know, take out these qualities, which we'll talk about. I'm not going to name them now, but they're qualities that don't serve us. They cause us to suffer in the future. So we take those qualities out, and then we go into Arjuna. Arjuna means someone that is, tell me more. Right? I'm open. Tell me, but why? When? How? Where? Right? So constantly asking questions. And then finally, someone who is refined and polished, and someone who has this big vision, which is Krishna. Okay, so this is answering what Mohan, Martin, and Mautik have mentioned last week, and what this whole negligence topic is about. So, okay, where are we so far? We're now on the topic whereby Pandu has shot the arrow, and he's been cursed. And now what happened after he was cursed is eventually, he tried to get intimate with his wife, and he died, right? So, the prophecy was fulfilled. Okay, then what happened, right? So now it's Pandu's death. So after Pandu's death, it was thought that the eldest son of Pandu, called Yudhishthira, should rule the kingdom. If you watch the Mahabharata, I'm sure you kind of relate to this scene. Okay, so Pandu was now died. And now, the eldest son should now rule the kingdom. However, it was thought, Duryodhana thought that he should rule the kingdom because he is the oldest son of Dhritarashtra, and Duryodhana himself is not blind. Okay. So far, is anything here incorrect about Duryodhana's thinking? I mean, I think he's fair, right? I think we would also think like that. So he's got a good point. We can't put Duryodhana into a bad guy. He go, no, I don't want you to rule. I should rule. So far, we would all sort of have this kind of, well, actually, I should rule, because after all, Dhritarashtra was the original eldest, and since I'm his eldest, I should now take over, and not Yudhishthira. So what happened next was Dhritarashtra decided reluctantly to hand over the kingdom to Duryodhana. Right now, why reluctantly? Because Dhritarashtra knew that Yudhishthira was more qualified. But something in him didn't allow him to make that decision. So he gave some part to Yudhishthira, and this part that he gave was an unbarren, unlivable, uninhabitable desert to the Pandavas. So he gave this barren desert to the 5 Pandavas, and he gave the Hastinapur kingdom to his eldest Duryodhana. Now, what happened next? The Pandavas agreed. Think about this. The Pandavas agreed to take this deal. And what happened then? Through hard work, they turned this uninhabitable, barren desert into a beautiful, thriving, prosperous city called Indraprastha. Okay. Now we can create 2 questions out of this. And the first question is, do you think that, or why do you think that Dhritarashtra allowed Duryodhana to rule and not Yudhishthira? Why do you think he allowed Duryodhana to rule? Even though, yeah?
He sort of based it on his attachment, his love, the love for his son was, blinding him from making the correct decision of handing it over to the more capable person.
Good. So Dhritarashtra, excellent. So Dhritarashtra was nursing resentment, which is understandable because he was blind and, he wanted to rule the kingdom, but he couldn't. So for years and years, he was like, why me? Why am I in this position? And he felt deprived for years, which is understandable. We would all feel deprived, right? Now we want to live our vision. So then he wanted to live his dream, that is his vision, through his eldest son, Duryodhana, right? And this is what we call actually passive-aggressive behavior. Now, what does passive-aggressive mean? Passive means he fought the kingdom through his son. So he didn't show this outside. He didn't explicitly show this, like I'm fighting. No, I want this to be my part. But he did it in a quiet way. So what does passive aggressive means? It means I'm not explicitly showing any kind of aggression, but through my subtle actions, my intention is what I want, right? So my intentions are in line with my own with my own, what I think or what I want to happen, but I'm not showing it outside. So this is called passive aggressive. And the next question is, was it right for the Pandavas to accept Dhritarashtra's small land? Because they did accept, but was it right that they accepted?
Maybe not.
Okay, please expand.
Can you explain?
I mean, they were quite strong as well and powerful. And to be fair, maybe they should have taken it. I don't know. I don't know much about the Mahabharata. So.
Well, I think what it is basically, I mean, it is to do with the lineage. I think the lineage is that, the older brother, Dhritarashtra, the older brother of Pandu, he's supposed to be the king. Unfortunately, because of being blind, he was not given that. Plus, I think he's also had a very, his character was not that conducive to be a king. And therefore, Pandu was crowned to become the king. But now, because Pandu is the king, then obviously the lineage would be that his son should be getting the throne after his death. But your question is whether do you think the Pandus did make the right decision choosing method? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they should have stated their point, but they did not. They became quite passive, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, according to the story, I mean, in my understanding, they were being very passive and humble and accepted what they could get.
Okay, good. Much closer. So imagine someone gives you something that is clearly, it's kind of like someone give you, 1% and, they take 99%, but the both deserve half. Now, how do you respond to that? Do you think it's not right to say, okay, I'll accept 1%?
And I think that's okay, because whatever happens for a reason. So if this is like the, cause and effect. So why it's happening in this way is obviously some effect from the causes that happened previously to the Pandus. Okay. So by taking it, they've actually made it very productive. If they haven't taken it, the story would have been different. So they've made whatever barren land in a very productive land. So it gives them a challenge.
Okay.
It's a good effect.
Yeah. Okay. Any more?
Yeah, I think also. I think it was not right on the part of Pandavas to take that land, because they sense that injustice, in the action of Dhritarashtra, but they choose not to give the feedback, not to raise the concern.
Yeah. Excellent, Meena. Very good point.
Is it like Yudhishthira refuse conflicts? Can that be a reason? I don't know. So Yudhishthira prefers not to have conflicts and harm anyone.
Okay.
Because he has.
Good. So what Gogner is saying is, often we say, in the name of avoiding conflicts, I'm just going to give this away, right? So just so that I could avoid conflicts. Now, okay, I'll give you my take on this. Each time Yudhishthira Yudhishthira was actually giving license to Duryodhana to act adharmically. So, and Dhritarashtra, so they just sort of were passive. Someone said passive, that was a good point. So they were passive and giving license, saying, it's okay, you can keep on acting adharmic. So what happened is they didn't stand up to the unfairness that was being given to them. And so this was, in a sense, conditioning or saying it's okay to do this next time. In other words, training the others, the Kauravas, it's okay, you can continue, this is okay in the society. And what happened is the Yudhishthira, the Pandavas, started to lose power. They were weaker and weaker to say no the next time around. Because this is the beginning of the story, right? And how many more times, the game of dice and Draupadi and so on, how many more times Yudhishthira said no? So why? Because he said no at the beginning, and each time his power tried to avoid conflict, as Gokman was saying, but in the name of what? In the name of supporting Adharma, right? So this is why even cultural messages, which I'm sure you've heard, like just let go and surrender to the flow. You've heard that before? Just be in the flow, right? Even these cultural messages are unhealthy, because what if someone just, offers me drugs and I go, this is meant to be, I'm meant to be, told cocaine is good for me. Just go with the flow, no problems. If we ran our lives like this, we would be in a mess. In other words, we're not being asked to go with the flow. We're asking to go with the flow, but intelligently, using our feedback system, as Mina was mentioning. And this means we need to address every situation appropriately through clarity of our buddhi, through clarity of our intellects. So it's not just a matter of just surrender. It's all meant to be, this is all Ishwara's one big play, and we're just, playing Ishwara's script. It doesn't work like that. Every situation demands and calls for a fresh response. And we can't use this situation to say it is meant to be. Otherwise, your life is just going to, go downhill very quickly. Now, next week, what we're going to do is we're going to continue with the story whereby the Pandavas, obviously they built this successful city called Indraprastha, and this made Duryodhana burn with jealousy. And then we're going to talk about what is jealousy, how to eliminate jealousy or how to reduce jealousy, and what do you do when someone's jealous towards you, right? So we're going to address these topics. A lot to discuss.
Andre, actually, I had a question.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was.
Yes. Hi.
Actually, I had a question. When you said about the vulnerability, sometimes we do approach people like we have some problems and we know that. But we exactly don't know what's our problem. Like we have some insecurities inside us.
Yeah.
But the others don't know about those insecurities. And they are giving advice based on their experiences. So in that case, isn't like the cause and effect that you said, the karma one that takes place due to negligence? How can we resolve that kind of issue?
Okay, so that's a good question. So the question was, what if I have some insecurities or some conditions in me that I'm not able to quite verbalize and make it clear, and therefore, because I'm unable to make it clear, I'm unable to ask or get the right help. So the only situation to this is to keep being open and continue trying to rephrase it in a certain way so that you may get different opinions. For example, I'll just go back to my section of my life, because my whole life, most of my life was basically asking for feedback, because there were vulnerabilities, there were blind spots, and I didn't know how to quite verbalize them. And every time someone gave me advice, I was like, I don't think they touched that part of me that's really seeking for help. And so this kept on happening. And I realized because I wasn't able to express the right words myself, I didn't even know what's going on in me. Now, the only solution to this is through the course of time, we need to keep trying, right, to get different opinions, different feedbacks, because you see, if one solution worked, then the question would have never came up in the first place. So we need to continue keep being open. That's the only way to resolve this. Does anyone have any other suggestions to this excellent question?
I think as a human, when we grow up, we are basically conditioned by the family, the religion, the culture, the community, the school we go to and all that. So that molds a person, and at times in that process, we do get traumatized emotionally, and we are unable to manage situations. So as you said, we procrastinate or we postpone things, and we don't want to deal with the situation. And eventually, as we grow up, that personality gets into us, And even in work situation, when you're working in a management situation or whatever, when you're faced with challenge, you try to brush it under the carpet, and become very passive about it. I think it is to do with that. But as you said, Andre, that I think over a period of time, by trying and acknowledging your feelings and keep on trying, I think you will be able to get over the hurdle in the long term.
Yeah, good. Especially when you said brushing under the carpet. And that's a good point, because brushing under the carpet becomes the normal of life. And we don't even realize we're doing it. So this is why it's important to expose ourselves by opening our mouths and sharing our opinions, because it is not until we say something that the other can have a chance, through their clarity, to make some fine adjustments to help the person to look at it in a different way. One of the promises that I made is any teacher that I'm with, I intentionally keep opening my mouth just for the sake of. In fact, I admitted to Nima, I said, Nima, you're one of my best teachers. You're my teacher, because I feel comfortable sharing my ignorance with you. And every time I do, and you say, you correct me, and that fine-tunes my thought processes. So I made a commitment to open my mouth, because that is the only time when you actually get to see whether you're clear, right? It's very easy to think we're clear when our mouths are shut. But the moment you have to paraphrase or rephrase or state something that's going on inside, then we really see, especially in front of a teacher, right? What's going on in our thought processes. So that causes us to inquire later on when the session ends. So that's another way to do it. It's just to be, as I said, be open, be vulnerable, and be courageous to share. Because frankly, no one's judging, right? We're too busy thinking about ourselves anyway. So that no one's thinking about someone, here's what this person said, let me announce this on the news and so on. No one's doing that.
On that point, Andre, going back to the Pandavas brothers, I just want to clarify something. Because the story originally, the father, Pandu, dies, and so his position is gone. So the uncle takes over, the older brother, and then appoints his son. And if the Pandavas fought that and refused to accept the offer and refused to take whatever they were given, there would have been a war. Good.
So
that war would have been initial instead of later. The Gita Dhyanam and all that happening later. So there was going to be a war, but the time has to be right when that war has to be done, because Krishna wasn't there yet.
Good.
So to me, I looked at that as the cause and what you originally explained to us, cause and effect of everything that happens. Like today something happens to me and I'm not taking the action that I should be taking, even though it tells me take that action. Maybe because of the surrounding circumstances I'm in. Then there comes an opportunity for me to take an action when the surrounding seems right, appears right. So that's what I believe, cause and effect. Like, why are we in this situation today? Because of the past cause.
So again, Rani, I'm going to take this up next session. Is what Rani's saying is, I'll just add this onto what Rani said. Is we're not saying what is right and wrong here. We're simply addressing what could have, or how to deal with situation that confronts us. Right now, the matter of whether they are addressed it sooner or later, that is something that's beyond our control, right? Because you're gonna act one way or the other. Now, suppose you act way one, that's going to have 5 different consequences. If you act way 2, that's going to have 5 different consequences. Now, each one of these 5 different, we also have to address them, right? So we're not now saying you should have acted this way, and then because it gave branch to these 5, now you need to address all of these. All we're saying is our actions determine our results. And those results then we are accountable for in order to keep addressing, keep living in harmony. Now, the other part is, sure, the war could have happened sooner or later. that would have been a boring story, right? Because it would have ended right there in the beginning. However, what we're learning is also trying to resolve in different ways, right? Because, they said no, and then, obviously something else happened, which we won't get into the details. And I kept said yes, and I said no, and each one of them produced consequences, and I had to deal with them. So it's like a continuity, a thread of continuity, right? And each demands a response. Now, I want to address this response in a much bigger context next time, especially when we get to Draupadi disrobing and the game of dice and all of that, because it's going to fit this, what you're saying now.
Yeah. Andre, the one thing I just wanted to bring up, we talk about getting feedback from the world.
Yeah.
And listening to it carefully. Sometimes the world can throw you feedback without knowing you properly.
Oh, okay. So uncalled for feedback.
Yes, it can be feedback that is incorrect. They don't. People often will make assumptions about someone and say, and give them feedback, which may not be correct.
Okay, good, Mathu. Another great point. I asked this my teacher Nima last week, and I'll just say what she said because it was a brilliant answer. Every situation that we undergo demands an inquiry into it. Because, okay, here, let me rephrase that question. How do you know whether the advice or the feedback given is a bias of someone else's perception, or whether it is something that they see and it's your blind spot, right? And it's true that they see it and it's helpful. Now, how do we determine the difference, whether it is their bias or whether it's their clarity? So there is actually no straight answer other than to look and to inquire, okay, what could they have meant? Is this true about me? Let's investigate. Could I find some examples whereby this could be true? And then even asking, someone else that's close to you or someone that you trust, do you see this in me because I received this feedback from another person? So in other words, when you're not just relying on one person, but you're using some connections and getting some help from other inputs also. The other is, suppose that someone sees something in you and it's kind of offensive, right? It's like, wow, it takes you back. Again, how do you know whether it is their cultural message or cultural perception speaking, or their conditioning of life, or whether it has nothing to do with you? The point is, we cannot know until you inquire into every single situation that comes up. Nothing should go unmissed. Everything should be attacked right on the spot and looked into it. Otherwise, if we don't, then it just passes away and you may never get the opportunity, that feedback again. So the only way is to inquire and use this intellect to look into and whether it is really true and what can I learn about this feedback. Any other answers to this before we close off?
I think every feedback is useful, even whether they are, given to you without knowing you, or because it might tell you something about the person who is giving the feedback, first of all.
Yeah.
And it also is could be something useful, even if it wasn't helpful. Useful and helpful are two different things.
Yeah, okay, I'll close up. I'll give an example, a tangible example. So one time a student came in with a sort of little bit of pride, spiritual pride, which I pick up easily because I was also sensitive to this and I was engaging this myself. And after the session, I told him through email that I sensed a little bit of spiritual pride and the sense of I know. And I explained this, and I even thought, like, am I saying this out of my own individuality? Am I now, trying to put him down? I really took time before I pressed that send button, right? So, and I finally sent it, and I looked over the email. I think it was like 3 or 4 times, or I reread it. Am I being rude here or anything? And I sent it, and the response that I got was negative, right? the message was taken in a sense of putting him down. And so he, you know, obviously responded in a way that put me down. And I responded to him and I said, I wasn't actually, you know, I would have said the same thing to my brother. Like, you know, I really don't, it's my duty if I sense something to say it, right? I'm not trying to be, you know, I don't want to be nice just to please the person. If I see something, I will honestly state it, whether I'm like or dislike. That's my duty. And, you know, he just responded with a heart. I don't know what that means, but, you know, the words would have been more useful. So I don't really know how it was taken. So obviously I questioned myself. I said, you know, did I come, you know, was this my mistake? Was I too harsh in what I sent? Frankly, to this day, I don't have an answer, but I'll tell you what, I did look at this scenario at least 30 times over and over again, analyzing and inquiring whether I came too harshly or whether it was his biases. So what happened? Like, so what's the end result? The end result is, you know, I try to do the best to learn out of this, right? And to this day, I still use this example to be careful before I speak, right? So all we can really do is feedback and try to learn out of what has happened. But I can't put I'm right or he's right? I can't do that because I don't know.
He was not probably expecting a response at all. And even if he got a response, wasn't ready to take a feedback.
Yeah.
That's the only conclusion.
Yeah. Or maybe, I don't know what the heart meant. You know, it's too vague for me. It can be 100 things. It was a red heart. So.
Love.
Sending you his love.
Sending you his love. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. So we know now what to do next week because, you know, we're going to continue this Mahabharata great story, and we're going to keep asking questions just to engage our minds and to think, to contribute. Okay. So let's close. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.